So, fun fact about me, I do empathy for a living. I know, of all the possible career choices, why this, right? My Asian parents be like, if you were going to do something theoretical, do astrophysics, you know? But in the past 4 years of doing this work, I've learned that empathy, while intangible, isn't actually theoretical. In fact, my team and I are dedicated to making empathy as tangible, practical, and actionable as possible. And here's why. How many of you have ever had a bad day? All of us, right? It's human. We all have bad days. So imagine you're having a bad day and you bump into two friends. The first friend takes one look at you and says, "Hey, why the long face? Cheer up lah." How do you think that makes you feel? The second friend pulls you aside and says, "Hey, you don't look okay. Wanna talk?" The difference between these two friends is not good friend or bad friend. It's empathy. Empathy is defined as the ability to feel and relate to another human being. At Tribeless, we describe it as the capacity to see parts of yourself in everybody else. In this scenario, your second friend saw that you were having a bad day because she, like any other human being, has had bad days too, and chose to treat you the way she would have wanted to be treated. That's empathy. Empathy may come naturally to us, but it gets lost in translation sometimes, especially in conversations. What do I say? Can I ask this question? Is it too personal? Is this topic even on the table? These questions are things we grapple with every day at Tribeless, because conversations are the medium we use to teach people empathy. Growing up, I've always craved for deeper conversations. You know, the kind where you're sitting around a campfire and the night stretches out before you, magical and endless. I never realized how important those conversations were for my mental health until 4 years ago when my life hit rock bottom. The year was 2016. I was living in San Francisco, my dream city, attending my dream university. Everything was perfect, except for the fact that I was dead broke, burnt out, and borderline depressed. I was so miserable there that eventually I had to make a decision no Asian kid should ever have to make. I dropped out of university. I thought that coming home to Malaysia would make me feel better, but every conversation I had just served to make my mental health worse. Hey, why you come home ah? What you doing now ah? Have you ever considered signing up for my financial freedom program ah? There was no one and nowhere I could be myself until I hosted a dinner party. Tribeless dinners were dinner parties with one rule: no small talk. And somehow it worked. By setting up the space and managing expectations, we were able to achieve a level of intimacy I had previously thought was impossible with strangers. It was at this dinner party that I found the courage to open up about my mental health for the first time. And to my surprise, everyone else just listened. They didn't jump to conclusions or cut me off. They were genuinely curious about my experience. And through that process of listening and sharing, I learned to understand and accept myself. I didn't know it then, but what I received that night was empathy. And I was absolutely mesmerized. The more dinner parties I hosted, the more I noticed a pattern. How is it that we were able to create a safe space for people to open up and share, no matter how diverse the group? So a few friends and I put our heads together and turned our group conversation format into something a little bit more tangible. We called it the Empathy Box. The Empathy Box is a fun, simple, structured way for a group of people to have an empathetic conversation. There are several components to it, but the one I want to share with you today is the response cards. We believe that responding is a skill and arguably the most important part of building empathy. Remember that scenario with our two friends? Their response to our bad day was indicative of their level of empathy. This is true for our day-to-day conversations too. So to guide our conversations, we came up with the 5 response cards. Show some love, help me understand, share an observation, offer an alternate perspective, and the wild card. And when shared in a sequence, they act as a back-of-pocket guide for empathetic response. So, let's play out that scenario once more, but this time, your friend is the one having a bad day, and we are going to have a conversation with her using the response cards. So, she's walking around with her RBF. And you go up to her and say, "Hey, you don't look okay. Wanna talk?" She looks at you, takes a deep breath, and says, "Life has been really stressful lately, man. I've been dealing with a lot of stuff." Okay, so this is the first time your friend is opening up to you. So chances are she's a little nervous, maybe a little scared. But instead of downplaying her worries, you go, "Hey, thanks for telling me. I didn't know you were going through that. To be honest, there are days where I feel the same way." She looks at you and says, "Really?" And you say, "Yeah, life is hard, yo. You're not alone." The first response here is show some love. Why do we start with love? Because acknowledging and appreciating what we have in common, the humanity we share, is the fastest way to build trust in a conversation. When someone opens up to us, it can feel like the burden is on us to make them feel better, like we need to fix their problems or offer a solution. But often, what feels best is simply being heard and validated. Then you ask, "Do you think you can help me understand what exactly is it you're going through?" This second response is "help me understand." The phrasing is deliberate. "Help me understand" places the asker in a position of humility and curiosity. It takes away the potential sting of a nosy question and allows both you and your friend to go deeper. In this case, you've just created the space for your friend to share more about her situation. Will she take you up on it? Your friend bites the bullet and says, "I just feel like I'm behind in life, you know? Everyone else is getting jobs, settling down, but I don't have clear goals like they do. The only thing I enjoy is drawing." You look at your friend and say, "Can I share an observation?" She nods and you go, "You always look so happy whenever you draw. You can do it for hours and hours and you never get tired. It's amazing." This third response is share an observation. We observe things all the time, shifts in mood, tone, body language, but we rarely feel comfortable enough bringing it up. This card says, "It's fine. Go ahead. Use the power of observation for good." And in this scenario, your friend didn't realize how passionate drawing made her until you pointed it out. "Wow, you're right. It does energize me," she says. And you nod. But I don't know if I can make a living with it," she says. How can I sustain myself? It's never going to work." When a conversation reaches this point and starts spiraling, it can be so tempting for us to swoop in and play savior. "No lah, it's fine. You can do it." Or, "Hey, I heard about this girl. She draw very good. Let me intro you." But often, the best thing to do is to offer an alternate perspective. This fourth response is usually grounded in personal experience. Without that, it can come off as preachy or fake. It's a very fine line, but when you approach it right, it can be immensely powerful. You reach out and hold your friend's hand. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but when my mom was younger, she wanted to be an interior designer, you share. But in her time, practicality won over passion. So she became a company secretary instead. We don't talk about it much, but whenever she redecorates our home, I see the same happiness in her that I see in you when you draw. I'm not telling you what you should or shouldn't do. I just want you to know that as your friend, I will support you, no matter what. And finally, we have reached the fifth and final response, the wild card. It's exactly as its name says. You can do whatever the situation calls for. "Come on, let's go to the stationery store," you say. I know that always cheers you up. Sometimes, at the end of a conversation, You can feel like taking action on something, but you're not sure if you can. Having the option to go outside of the box allows you to expand the possibilities of the conversation and your relationship. This may be a hypothetical scenario, but it mirrors our life more often than you think. A too quiet classmate, a rude colleague, a stressed out sibling. Every conversation is an opportunity for us to listen, to hold space, and to offer an empathetic response, if we choose to. We started this journey with dinner parties, but now the work that we do is used by thousands of people all around the world, from classrooms to boardrooms to bedrooms, creating safe spaces for real, honest, authentic conversations to happen. It is fulfilling work, but I must confess, Tribeless is the most difficult thing I have ever had to do. Not just because our vision is totally scary and unheard of in Southeast Asia, but because there is literally no room for hypocrisy at all. We have to practice what we preach about empathy in conversations. Otherwise, everything would just fall apart. I guess that's what you get when you build a company with your best friend, boyfriend, and younger sister. But I would tell you the best thing that has come out of this journey. My relationships. I know that I can always turn to them if I'm having a bad day, and they will shower me with empathy until all is right with the world again. And they know I will always do the same for them too. As we transition into a new decade, I invite you to think about your relationships and the depth of conversations you're having. In a world of Zoom calls and flex pics, how might we create more intentional spaces for connection, for vulnerability, for empathy? Just remember, the next time you're at a loss of words, think of the 5 cards in the back of your pocket, and always start with showing some love. Thank you.